Hi, and welcome to Nuts and Bolts of a Skills-Based Approach to Health Education. I'm Holly Alperin. I'm a clinical assistant professor at the University of New Hampshire. I work in our health and PE program, preparing pre-service educators. Primarily, I'm on the health education side of things. My co-author of this presentation is Sarah Bennis. Sarah is an associate clinical professor at Merrimack College. And while you won't hear from Sarah today in this recording, you can be assured that she's right in with all the work that's going on with skills-based health education. Our human kinetics products that support the work that we've been doing for the last 15 or so years start off with the essentials of teaching health education, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. This text here takes the nuts and bolts concept to a deeper level. It really provides you with a solid base and research of understanding of what we mean when we say skills-based health education. It also provides examples for each of the National Health Education skills standards for implementation. Lesson planning for skills-based health education meeting the secondary level national standards was published shortly after. This text uses and brings together some great ideas from educators in the field who have been implementing skills-based health education and really provides you with lessons, units, assessments, and learning activities to use in the classroom. Our newest product, which is being released this spring, is lesson planning at the elementary health education level. So similar in design to the secondary level, this provides lessons, units, learning activities, and assessments for the K2 and 3-5 level for each of the 7 skill standards of the National Health Education Standards. The objective for this presentation is that by the end, you'll be able to describe the key components to implementing a skills-based approach in health education. So let's dive right in. A skills-based approach is one that's planned, sequential, comprehensive, and relevant. It's implemented through participatory methods, and we do this in order to help students develop the skills, attitudes, and functional knowledge they need to lead health-enhancing lives. A couple of things to note with this definition is that, yes, we want our students to be engaged in meaningful ways that help them to develop skills, attitudes, and functional knowledge. We're going to discuss each of these components in greater detail, but I want to also point out that the idea here is that our job and our role as health educators is to set students on a path to lead healthier lives. We can't hold ourselves to the standard that they're going to be healthy because we don't necessarily have that kind of connections or control over their lives once they leave our classrooms. But what we can do is a couple of things. The first being to help them develop health literacy. So what we know about health literacy is that it's linked to individuals' knowledge, motivation, and competencies. What they know, what they can do, and whether or not they're motivated to do something. This also requires individuals to access, understand, appraise, and apply their learning or apply this health information. So this definition, along with the definition that we just gave for skills-based health education, both note that it's not enough to know something, but it's what we're able to do with it once we learn it or once we know it. Ultimately, we want our young people to be able to make healthier choices across their lifespan related to healthcare, disease prevention, and health promotion. That if we can set them up on a path through teaching them skills and giving them time to practice, we have actually helped them to move down the path towards developing health literacy. The goal then becomes to help students increase their self-efficacy or their belief in their ability to do something so that they then have the agency or the capacity and propensity to do something to take control of their health. So what does this really mean? It means that in the classroom, we want our students to not only feel and develop the belief that they can do it, We want them to also be able to have the skills and capacity to do it. This isn't about empowering students, because power can be taken and given. This is really about helping students to develop what they need to know and do in ways that are going to work for them. Some core aspects of a skills-based approach, first and foremost, is that skill development supports positive health outcomes. When we think about behaviors that we hope to see in our young people and that we identify as healthier, we want our students to be able to develop the ability to do those behaviors. So, in order to do that, we recognize that practice is critical, that it's not enough for them to learn about these skills or to learn about these behavioral outcomes. We need to teach them how to do it and give them time to practice, which then also includes meaningful feedback in order for them to improve upon their practice. Again, we want to help our individuals develop self-efficacy, because we know from research that when self-efficacy is low, when I don't believe in my ability to do something, I am less likely to even try. We also know from self-efficacy research that it's contextual. So I may be self-efficacious in one skill or one area of my life and not so self-efficacious in another area. And so it's not either you have it or you don't, but it's based in a specific context or setting. This requires us to have meaningful and purposeful engagement in our classroom and with our students, to do so in ways that not only shows them that as educators, we are invested in them as people, it also is meaningful and purposeful that it recognizes that each of our students is coming at this from different life experiences. So in order for different life experiences to be recognized, we need to create learning experiences that allow our students to explore their own circumstance and how to apply these skills within their own circumstance. This has us using culturally responsive and sustaining teaching strategies, that we understand and recognize that what we say and what we do in the classroom, the visuals we share, the resources we use matter, and that they are representative and that our students can see themselves through those teaching materials, through our examples. And so this may be cross-cutting around a lot of different topics, but that we're being mindful as educators to employ these strategies. We want to ensure that our learning process is personalized for each student. And again, as I've talked about for the last couple of bullet points here, this really gets to the heart of skills-based health education. Because at the end of the day, while we might need some of the same information, or even if we were all looking at decision-making, how I'm going to apply that in my life or how that's going to play out once I do apply it might look different. And so the more opportunities we can give for students to apply their learning in real-world, authentic examples, the more opportunity and the more likely they are to transfer their learning outside of the classroom. And then ultimately, we're promoting the development of agency, right? So again, it's not enough to have the capacity or the belief in our ability to do something. We have to have the capacity to do it as well. And through the development of skills, the skills of the National Health Education Standards, we are more likely to help our students to be able to develop that agency. So let's dive into each of the components a little deeper. The first is skill development. Again, using the National Health Education Standards as the framework. There are 8 National Health Education Standards, the first being core concepts. That is a standard that is really about the content of what we teach in health education. It's the other 7 that we're most focused on in a skills-based approach. Analyzing influences, accessing valid and reliable information, interpersonal communication, decision-making, goal setting, self-management, and advocacy. Those are the skills that we want to help develop And then we use standard 1 as the context or to pull that content in. So for example, if our students are going to be advocating for safer communities, they need to know how to be good advocates. And then they need to know a little bit about what it means to be a safer community or what some of those examples would be in order to ensure that their advocacy message is on point and appropriate. Skills become our units. We're no longer looking at content-based units. And the reason that this matters, why we want to say we're going to have a decision-making related to drugs and alcohol, or analyzing the influences of social media on our body image, is different than an alcohol unit that talks about drugs and alcohol, or a social media unit that includes analyzing influences, is because skill development is the foundation for what we're doing. When we identify the behaviors we want to see have happen and the skills that are going to help us get to those behaviors, we first focus on skill development as a way to reach those behaviors. This also helps to ensure that we spend a critical amount of time having students practice the skill and providing them with feedback. The content then, or the topic, becomes the context for what we're doing. The context and the content may always change, and ultimately, when we do this well, students learn that they can use a skill, such as goal setting, for lots of different areas within their lives. This model here, especially for folks who are in physical education, may be fairly familiar. We talk about when we develop skills, starting with skill introduction. What is the skill? What does it mean? And how does this apply to me? We then teach students the steps of the skill. Okay, I understand that this is important in my life, but how do I do it? So we teach students the steps. After they know what it means to do it, we then model it for them. And we model it for them in a way that has them doing it appropriately and in authentic settings. The next step really should be the biggest step of all. We give them time to practice what they've learned. They're integrating information and content, and they're applying the skill in real and authentic and meaningful ways. And finally, we provide feedback and reinforcement around their skill practice. We help our students to understand with what they're doing well, and where they might need to grow. The second area is functional information. Functional information provides the context for what we do. You'll notice in this graphic that skill development is the largest, right? We spend most of our time on skill development, and the way we teach is through participatory methods. But this functional information helps our students to do the skill in health-related ways. So for example, the skill of communication and the sub-skill of refusal skills could be used for lots of different topic areas. However, if I want students to develop refusal skills around vaping, or I want them to develop refusal skills around sexual health behaviors, I need to teach them some information that is going to help them to be able to come up with reasoned arguments. I may need to teach them certain information to help them make a decision. I may need to teach them some information in order to apply self-management techniques related to, say, time management or increasing happiness. So it's really thinking about what it is I want students to know so that they're able to do the health behavior. If you think about this as a bullseye, it's that centermost point of the bullseye that we're really talking about here. What are those enduring understandings that we want students to take away? The next is participatory methods. We as humans learn through observation, modeling, and social interaction. We observe others who are performing a task. We can see and evaluate through our observations how well they're doing something. If we don't know if they're doing it well or they're not doing it well, we may take those observations to be a way for us to consider our own personal ideas about what we see. Does it seem like a good idea? Does it not? For modeling, modeling is the opportunity to see something being done. So it's a little different than observation. Observation is, I'm just observing the world around me, I'm seeing what's going on. Modeling is, I'm paying specific attention to what is being done, how it's being done, and trying then to recreate what was done in that model. Social interaction then is integrating our work with others to learn new and novel information. This is an opportunity as humans that we oftentimes need to work together. If we work in isolation, we can solve some things. However, it's unlikely that we'll change what we're doing if we don't necessarily interact with others in meaningful ways. So having conversations become important here. Pair sharing, getting feedback from our peers helps us to apply our skills in a meaningful way. Giving feedback is that when we're able to give feedback, we understand what we're talking about or the skill enough to be able to give a reasoned argument behind it. So the biggest takeaway for participatory methods is that we want to move away from this idea of busy, happy, and good, and more towards opportunities for students to engage in meaningful participation that helps them to achieve the learning outcomes that were designed. Finally is attitudes and motivation. When we think about helping to develop attitudes and motivation, the first is that we need to recognize that students have ideas, right? They have come up in a world and surrounded by other individuals that have helped to shape their idea about what health is, what being healthy means, and this idea of healthy decision-making. Our students need to develop their own priorities and attitudes. Our job as health educators isn't to tell our students what to value and what to believe related to their health. Our job is to get them to think critically related to their own values and beliefs and how their values and beliefs help them or deter them from positive health behavioral outcomes. And then finally, when we think about attitudes and motivation, we want to encourage critical thinking. Because when we encourage critical thinking in our classroom around health behaviors, it helps our students to not only apply the learning into their world, but to really think through and question some things that may have just been presented to them in the past. Because we're all surrounded by, maybe it's family, maybe it's classmates and peers, friends, teachers, that we have lots of information coming at us. Then once you add in the media to the mix, right? There's lots of different things we could be thinking about, and that could be influencing how we view the world and how we view health. When we offer experiences for students to think critically about their own health, we actually prime them to develop their self-efficacy and their agency in these areas. So they can then become the driver of who they are as a health-related individual. When we think about a skills-based approach to health education, this quote came to mind, that learning is an experience. Everything else is just information. In the classroom and outside of our classrooms, when we help to prepare students to lead lives where they are fully invested, we give them that opportunity through those experiences. We want to help to create students who feel valued. We want to give our students the experiences where they can take their learning and thrive. So that's a little bit of the nuts and bolts of health education in a skills-based way. We're here to help. Please feel free to reach out to us for more for more information related to this. You can find us at the email address. You can find both Sarah and I on Twitter, and you can find some information on the blog. We're here to help, and we're definitely here to help support you on your skills-based journey. Thank you for taking the time for being with me today.